All right, guys, so the NFL draft is officially over, and I want to go ahead and give some takeaways for you guys. By the way, I had to do this video with my son in my hand because I'm babysitting right now, and if I put him down, he will cry, and he always needs to be held. So, with that said, he's going to be joining me for this video. Now, some main takeaways here is that, look, in James Gladstone's first NFL draft as a GM, he really did his best to make a big splash, right? And he did that in a big way. This is the biggest and most risky draft trade the Jaguars have ever had. And I say that because when you actually look at what the Jags have done in the first round in history, traded away Rob Johnson for a first round pick. That was something that was a no brainer. And even back in the day, they traded away Jalen Ramsey and got 2 first round picks. But the Jaguars were kind of forced to do that, right? Jalen Ramsey forced their hand, so they didn't really have any choice but to do that. But with that said, if everything stands the way it is now and the Jaguars don't do any trades in 2026, that will be the first year that the Jaguars will not have a first round pick, which is pretty big, right? We as Jaguar fans, we're kind of used to being the Cleveland Browns, right? We're used to the team that trades back. We're used to being the team that collects draft capital. Then eventually, what do we turn that into? We turn that into Travis Etienne and Caleb on Chason, right? So with that said, it does kind of feel nice to actually be that team that's attacking, that we feel like we're going out there and getting the blue chip prospect instead of just sitting and letting the draft kind of come to us. So time will tell if this was the right decision to make, but whatever the Jaguars have been doing in the past has been wrong, so it's kind of nice to see that we do something different for once. Next up, the Jaguars now have a lot of speed. Travis Hunter obviously adds a ton of speed on his own. Really just his agility and acceleration is insane. Caleb Ransaw ran a 4.33 40-yard dash. Bashal Tootin, a 4.32 40-yard dash. Ryan Lane, 4.57 40-yard dash. And you even look at free agency. I mean, De'Ami Brown is a burner at receiver too. So, the Jaguars probably felt that they were a pretty slow team. They get rid of guys that weren't really complete barn burners or whatever. But with that said, it's kind of insane with the way you actually look at the way the Jaguars did things. We transformed the roster in a lot of ways, especially when you look at the defensive backfield and even offensive line. I mean, you have you have 6 new offensive linemen between guys that you drafted and guys that you signed in free agency. So we could see a complete, basically, overhaul of both units. And that's generally what happens when a new regime takes over. You get rid of some of the guys that you don't like. You really put in your stamp. And that's a big reason why I have a feeling that everybody in this like draft class will make the Jaguars roster. I really do. And next up, and this is a big thing, the Jaguars clearly have 100% confidence in Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars, what do they do in free agency? They added Nick Mullins. That's not really anything. It's not like the Colts adding Daniel Jones to a decent contract, right? Nick Mullins doesn't provide you any competition. The Jaguars also didn't draft any quarterback in this draft. So that's one thing. Also, the Jaguars don't have a single first-round pick next year. And I know a lot of people will kind of throw the caveat out there that, we'll see if this draft pick is worth it, because if the Jaguars end up with a top 5 pick, that's not going to be good because that's going to be given to the Browns. Well, I think if the Jaguars thought that was possible, they wouldn't be making that pick. I think if you kind of compare yourselves to the Cleveland Browns probably aren't moving away from number 2 if they had a quarterback they actually believed in, right? But the Jaguars, on the other hand, do have a quarterback they believe in Trevor Lawrence, so they really feel like they can strike. The Browns, they might have only had 1 first-round grade on a quarterback in Cam Ward, so they're probably a team that, hey, let's get some more draft capital next year. I don't think we're going to be any good next year, which, is kind of interesting because I don't know how many people will actually stay around there. But they might say, okay, next year is really the time to strike for quarterback, and we need all the draft capital possible to be able to do that. So with that said, the Jaguars, if Trevor Lawrence all of a sudden does suck and he doesn't do much next year, then all of a sudden the Jaguars are kind of stuck, right? They don't have a first round pick, and we all know the best quarterbacks go in the first round. And the Jaguars, with that said, I don't think they would make this trade if they didn't 100% believe in Trevor Lawrence. So next takeaways. Now, on the other end of the Trevor Lawrence spectrum, there's really no more excuses for him, right? he has, we've been begging for the longest time, get him a wide receiver one. You have Brian Thomas Jr. going into his second year. You add another wide receiver and Travis Hunter, who this could form into kind of like a T. Higgins and Jamar Chase kind of situation. You revamp the offensive line. There's a bunch of new offensive linemen. You have the young, innovative, offensive-minded head coach in the building, and hopefully you established a much better culture. And it's always frustrating because when you watch, I've been somebody that I've been defending Trevor Lawrence, and some people will say it's making excuses. I don't necessarily believe so because it's actual things that have happened. The Jaguars were a cultural nightmare the last couple of years. I mean, we saw Doug Peterson come in here. It was great. Things were very, very positive. Things were moving in the right direction. Just 2 years later, Doug Peterson was completely checked out. Trent Baalke had complete control over the whole entire Jaguars football organization. It took Shad Khan actually going out there in the trenches and trying to hire one of these top head coaches to realize how buns this guy was, right? And how bad he was for the Jaguars to actually release him. And then now the Jaguars, it feels like we have such a good culture that we're building. It's a little bit corny sometimes. James Gladstone, can say some corny stuff and everything's so good over here, man. Like it's a little bit like a company corporate retreat kind of vibes to me, but I don't care, man. As long as things are positive in the building and as long as we start winning games, I don't care. I don't care what goes on in the building, right? But now it feels like we have the right culture in place. We're bringing in good players. We had a pretty good, when you actually look at the consensus board of the guys that the Jaguars drafted, people were well over consensus. And not only that, like we're actually going to be able to have people that can really maximize everybody, right? And that's been a big thing about the Jaguars is like not being able to have the right people in place to, I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. Trent Baalke would draft players that he would love, and Doug Peterson wouldn't use them. And I guess the best example is like Mason Smith, right? As we look back, the Jaguars didn't draft any defensive tackles, so it looks like it was a complete pissing contest between Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke when it comes to the usage of him. From going from healthy scratch, from all of a sudden he starts playing, he actually starts doing better. And we look back at how many games that were missed and snaps that were missed that could have really used him when it comes to just making him a little bit better. It's just interesting. So yeah, with all that said, there are no more excuses for Trevor Lawrence anymore, and I think he'll have at least 2 years now, right? With not having a first-round pick next year. And I believe in Trevor Lawrence. I really do. I'm just trying to really just level with the Jaguar fans that don't believe in him. So we'll see how that goes. Also, it looks like the Jaguars really did go best available player. The Jaguars had a need at that third edge rusher. They kind of addressed it in the 6th round, but you can't really rely on a 6th-round pick, the McLeod guy from Auburn, to really be your third edge rusher. So they went out and signed Emmanuel Ogbah the day after the draft ended. So, I think I haven't really seen that in years past where we went out and really targeted guys right after the draft. It felt like, and we know that Trent Baalke massively overreached for guys in day 2 and day 3 of the draft. So it's good that they actually have a board and that they're sticking with it. And time will tell if it actually does pay out. I think my final takeaway is that the Jaguars actually are in win now mode. And it can be seen by really the trade up for Travis Hunter. From everything these guys are saying, it feels like they really do believe in the talent on this team. And I think that the Jaguars could definitely be a playoff team next year. I really do. I think that with the amount of one-score losses that the Jaguars had, and I believe in Trevor Lawrence. I believe in BTJ. We have Travis Hunter in the building now. I believe in some of our pieces on defense. A healthy Tyson Campbell, Josh Heinzel, and the Trayvon Walker, that duo. There are, of course, maybe some sketchy spots, but what if our draft picks? What if Caleb Branshaw actually turns out to be a pretty good player? That would be huge for the Jaguars, right? That's a starter. What if Wylam turns into your starting left guard and he actually does pretty well? We need the draft picks to hit, of course, because you can't just get wins with just your first round pick hitting. But I think the Jaguars could very well be a playoff team. I think the Titans will be a mess. I don't think the culture is that good. So we got to beat the Houston Texans, who actually took a step back in 2025. So, or 2024, I should say. And what did they do to their offensive line? Not much. Not much. I did not. I was not impressed with their offseason in the least bit. So, with that said, those are some of my takeaways. Of course, I'll have more later on. There's plenty to talk about with this draft, but I'm really happy the draft is over. I'm happy we can finally take a step back and look at our team in specific, as opposed to looking at the large pool of players and coming out with these mock drafts, and none of them are remotely right? So, with that said, let me know what you guys think. Let me know some of your takeaways. Appreciate you guys for sticking with me and watching this channel. Please, on your way out, drop a like and go Jags.